get Joseph Farah on to give us his take on election 2012 and where he sees it going. What another 4 years of Obama versus Romney would look like. But then I want to get into a report he put out a few days ago, headlined at WND.com, when Israel strikes Iran in October. So now he's saying when they strike. And I've never seen the war more green-lighted. It's been green-lighted before and then backed off. But from every source, it looks like it's going that way. And I want to see how that ties in with the London Telegraph now admitting, when I reported 9 months ago when the Syria destabilization began, that Britain and the U.S., or the banks that run us and run our military, are running al-Qaeda and are trying to overthrow Syria. I'm no fan of Assad, but, man, this is al-Qaeda. That is admitted as the main fighting force. And all of that is going on. And now they're saying that they're wonderful freedom fighters when they go in and strap men in cars with bombs and say, we're going to kill your family if you don't go blow up a police checkpoint. I mean, this is on television now, and our media is like, isn't torture good? Isn't secret arrest good? Isn't al-Qaeda good? The CFR 3 weeks ago, one of their writers said, quote, we need al-Qaeda. So talk about a new level of immorality. I know Joseph Farah is there in Virginia. He has a lot of sources in the military-industrial complex, and he can tell us what he thinks the grand strategy is and where all of this is going, all the preparations for collapse, you name it. Joseph Farah is founder, editor, and CEO of WorldNetDaily, a nationally syndicated columnist for Creator Syndicate. He is the co-author of 13 books, including his latest, The Tea Party Manifesto, and his classic, Taking America Back. Now in its 3rd edition and 14th printing. Farah is the former editor of the legendary Sacramento Union and other major market dailies. And he joins us now to break all of this down. He also set up the Western Journalism Center. We'll talk about the attempts to censor the web as well and have an internet tax by the FCC that Google and others want. Yeah, because it shuts down their competition. All of that and more with Joseph Farah today. But first off, I know we got you on a few minutes early and you heard that caller, or if you didn't hear, the caller was saying, well, what do you do if Romney and Obama are basically the same but different rhetoric? Do you morally not vote for Romney? And because it almost acquiesces or gives credence to it. And I see that point, but then what do you do when you're somebody like Joseph Farah or Alex Jones, where even though you said, hey, don't vote for McCain or Obama 4 years ago, you were put in the camp by the Obama people and they've gone after you. So, yes, I'm put in the camp of Romney, even though I'm not in it. What do you say to all that?
Well, Alex Jones, I listened to your response to that caller, and I have to tell you that was a very coherent, concise, articulate response, and it really resonates with what I'm thinking, what's in my soul in this election. Yeah, as you know, in 2008, we were both none of the above people, and right now we're wrestling with survival. My thought back in 2008 was, hey, you know what? I mean, if what's the difference? Flip a coin. I knew that Obama was going to be a more tyrannical kind of repressive president. Clamping down on liberty in more dramatic ways, faster. But I also thought, well, maybe that's. Maybe Americans need that as a wake-up call because, you can take the slow road, to hell, and people don't even recognize where you're going. But sometimes, being on the highway to hell, people say, hey, time to do a U-turn. And I thought we saw a little bit of that, in the 2010 election. Obviously, there was, we had the Tea Party movement arose, and so, I think that feeling was somewhat validated. But then again, Alex, I have to say, I think to a great extent the Tea Party movement was hijacked by special interests. And in 2012, I don't know, it's yet to be determined how much of a force they're going to be. But I think you're right. We've got a limited choice here. I mean, there's what they used to say, not a dime's worth of difference. But there is, because, as I mentioned the last time I was with you, I think, and I hope I'm not just, justifying my own gut instincts here and my own self-preservation, but I really believe that if Obama's reelected, there is no chance for turning this country around. No chance whatsoever. And so, I'm not going to be, endorsing Mitt Romney for president on your show here. But I do believe that for people like you and me and liberty activists across this country, we do need a little breathing room in the next 4 years.
Well, here's another example.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Paul, who did not endorse McCain 4 years ago, has come out with a limited endorsement saying, I won't fully endorse Romney. But that shows how bad Obama is, that the sense is he's gotten all his criminals in place. And so even rearranging deck chairs, it'll take the bureaucracy a while to kind of get its new scams in place with Romney, but that with Obama not facing re-election, he will drop the hammer. And even if Romney's horrible, he'll at least be facing re-election.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah, you think about what a lame duck second-term administration of Obama will be like. No guardrails, And so, as I said in a program the last time I was on with you, for people like Alex Jones and Joseph Farah, I got to tell you, I'm being very honest with you. I think if Obama's reelected, guys like you and me are either going to be in jail or going to be dead. I think the chances for doing a U-turn in terms of American policy, preserving freedom and so forth, we may be on an irreversible course with 4 more years of Obama.
What do you make of all of the amazing stories where they're coming out and saying the Army's training to take on a Tea Party insurrection that links up with Al-Qaeda and Army training for gun confiscation? I mean, these are confirmed manuals that are out there, just incredibly seditious.
Absolutely. And, I think it ties in, people may think this is far-fetched, right? But then you look at the facts we know for sure about, Fast and Furious, an operation like that. And we say, if the government can get away with that, if the Obama administration can get away with that, the most powerful people in the world, just the facts on the table, there's no accountability whatsoever. What happened to that congressional investigation? Well, what happened to to those subpoenas? Where are the calls for impeachment by the Republicans? It just withered and died on the vine. And so, I think that when you see that people were killed, gunned down through an official action ordered by the president. By the way, he was taking credit for Fast and Furious before it became, a scandal. And so it's mind-boggling, Alex. We just got to be very, very careful. I'm so proud of you for getting the word out about these things. You're doing a great job, and I'm just hoping that more of the American people become aware of what's happening, how our liberties are being trampled underfoot.
Expanding on that, it came out over a year ago, as you know, even in Politico, but they were reporting on like it was cute, that Media Matters, funded by the White House and George Soros, had infiltrated News Corps and other media, and of course you're on their radar, I'm on their radar, and said, we're going to sabotage and destroy people from within. It's our job to destroy organizations from within. This is like a foreign army or something. And they don't even get in trouble. They don't lose their 501c3. That is the difference. It shows you that these are real zealots who really do want to silence their opposition.
Yeah, there's a totalitarian mindset here that it's hard for people like us to even understand. It's so foreign to the way we think. And this is what we're dealing with. This is the mentality of people in the White House today. It's the mentality of the, you talk about the ruling class. There's also a ruling culture out there, from the media establishment. Certain things you can't talk about. They're perfectly comfortable with submitting their questions to, the president and even to Romney now. When they do interviews with Romney, they're already submitting the quotes back to Romney. It's just a crazy mess.
It's a total sheepish lapdog mentality. Alex Jones here with a very important announcement for truth seekers. We've carried a lot of amazing films and books over the years on the online video bookstore at Infowars.com. And out of all the titles we've carried, one stands out because it is just so chillingly convincing. And that's Dreams from My Real Father by Joel Gilbert, available at Infowars.com. This film exposes the fraud that Obama is like nothing I've seen. If you want to know who Obama's real daddy is, this is the film for you. Don't forget, your purchase supports our broadcast and our growing media network. You'll also find at InfoWarsShop.com None Dare Call a Conspiracy by Gary Allen, the book that woke me up. We're also carrying Behind the Green Mask, You in Agenda 21 by Rosa Corey. This book is coffin nails to the globalist takeover. The Greater Good, the most professional and up-to-date film I've ever seen exposing the scourge that is vaccines. These titles and a lot more are all available at InfoWarsShop.com. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, as well as video. We stream with the radio show and the nightly news show at PrisonPlanet.tv. And we are fighting the construction of a prison planet. This is a short segment I want to get into the October surprise and the intel that Joseph Farah has. I mean, he has it right here in his headline, when Israel strikes Iran in October. So we'll get that exclusive info, and it is an exclusive that Joseph's going to give us here, and tie that into Al-Qaeda. And now we're being told how wonderful they are bringing down Libya and now trying to bring down Syria. But when I was at his office covering Bilderberg in June, because he's there in Virginia, just a few miles away, he said, hey, have you ever seen a drone? I said, no, I haven't seen one in person. And then a week later, after I left, his house in a rural area got buzzed. Driving into work a few weeks ago, I stopped, saw one right over the highway. Highway department had a drone out there. So massive proliferation. We'll have to talk about that a little bit later. Well, I mean, why not now? I mean, wow, there is this big rollout of our tax money to militarize against us, and now TSA on the streets everywhere, Joseph.
It's the police state, Alex. You should be here with me in Tampa. First of all, we got we had the hurricane threat and lots of concern about that. And of course, the convention and demonstrations. But there's National Guard all over the street. I mean, you can't get within a mile or two of the convention center.
I wish they'd make the border like that.
Isn't that amazing? It's a great point. You stop. You're walking on the street. In my case, in a suit and tie, you're going to be asked where you're going, all this kind of stuff. And it's really it just reminds me, of how we've lost the America that you and I knew as kids. And so it's
and they do that on purpose. They have these national security events worldwide and just use it to promote the police state and the end of due process. But we were talking during the break. You said your power was out yesterday there in Tampa?
Yeah, it was a limited thing, and my hotel was completely out for about 4 hours, and that was lovely. And the whole time I'm thinking, what am I doing here? There's nothing going on. There's absolutely no news here. I should be home. I know more about what was going on. You lose power. You got to.
Oh yeah, you can dial in on 100 different video feeds, watch all the other people. That's why I never go anywhere, because I can just sit right here and have the whole world.
Yeah, good call. I didn't do it. I didn't do it in 2008. I forgot. I had done it in 2004 and felt like I was. You're supposed to be in the center of things when you're covering an event like that, but you don't have the perspective you have when you're, on the internet.
Sure. I mean, in 2004, I got to walk around and had my seat and my press passes and got to see Arnold Schwarzenegger talk about protecting und Homeland, which was very surreal. A guy talking about the homeland in a German accent when it's fatherland. And I got to, see old man Bush creeping around. I mean, big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's only good to get interviewed by media. The only reason you'd want to go is to get interviewed. And I did get on a bunch of national TV. So, I mean, I guess it is okay for that if you want to get publicity, which is important for any media organization.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do is be here to help support Aaron Klein, who's got a big book out there, and see if I could help him get that media. But, it's a media zoo here. I mean, because everybody's here that the media wants to talk to, and so the shows are all, booked up in advance. So it's strategically, it's probably not the best thing.
Hey, but at least you get to experience a hurricane. How's the weather? Is it raining?
No, it's past us now. It's headed up towards the Gulf. It sounds like looks like New Orleans is going to be hit hard again, which is just tragic.
Can you image Obama in there with his joystick controlling the hurricane?
It's going to be interesting if it does hit New Orleans and we've got another disaster on our hands. How quickly he responds. Remember all the crap they gave Bush for not responding. But this is a real management crisis when you have.
Well, I wouldn't give Bush trouble for the feds not doing a good job. That's just to be expected. The gun confiscation was the issue there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Stay there. Let's get into Iran. Let's get into Al-Qaeda, and then phone calls. Joseph Farah is our guest, WND.com. I, of course, am Alex Jones of Infowars.com. And they also have a magazine. You can find out about that there on their site as well.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
I really should be covering this hurricane more because it does look just like Katrina. They're saying even worse, Hurricane Isaac. And I know it was hitting Florida yesterday and now is out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and looks like it's gaining steam, not losing it. So get ready. But here's another example of how government can't and won't protect you. I want to get into the geopolitical with Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily.com or WND.com. But we can play the clips here. In fact, I know what I'm going to cover on the nightly news tonight. It's gun confiscation at Katrina, because that's a scary thing that they jammed the police communications, cut down their towers because the feds wanted to control it, blocked good agencies like the Coast Guard, even state police and police from other areas, thousands of firefighters that wanted to help, wouldn't let people walk out on the highways, made them go to the Superdome, and then went to some of the most expensive houses in the country. We're talking like $10 million mansions, classical architecture. And I guess Georgian style, you'd call it, the big columns, the rest of it. Because I have a book on architecture, and those houses are actually in there. And it showed them on the news going in and taking the guns out of their gun safes. Houses with generators, houses with rich people in them. And the reason I raise that is they could argue and make excuses that in some crime-ridden areas, we thought criminals were in this building, so we went in to see if there were felons and ran their background, and they weren't felons, so good, here's your gun, protect yourself. But when they made a beeline for the rich neighborhoods and looted them, and most people never got their guns back, and that was under Bush. And now we have the Army manuals from that time. They've been training for gun confiscation during emergencies. So what do you expect the Army to do during an emergency? The same training they have for Fallujah, it's now been declassified, is the training for America. And Joseph Farah, just like I was on a cruise ship when Katrina came in. My first cruise I went on with my wife, and I had one child at the time. And we were dumb. We didn't know you don't go on a cruise in hurricane season, but it was real cheap. We went. And on the way back, here comes Katrina, and it chases us into Galveston. There were 30-foot waves, water coming in the huge ship. They had most of the decks closed. The staff were all, scared, looking at the television sets. And I, for a week, felt like I was rocking back and forth trying to get my land legs back. But I'm ranting here. The point is, no one knew how big that would be. I experienced Katrina. Well, imagine this. I mean, it's sneaking up on us. What do you make of what's going to happen if it does hit? that could be turnabout as fair play. If it ruins another big city and then Obama can't respond, there goes all of their partisan politics over it.
Yeah, I mean, they're still talking about, Bush's mishandling of Katrina. And as you point out, a lot of it's deserved. They don't really zero in on the real problems, like gun confiscation, but rather, like the federal government is supposed to take care of every problem that arises in our country. That's the expectation that we all have now. But, yeah, as you point out, this hurricane really hasn't hit. The last land it hit was Haiti. Missed Cuba, didn't hit the coast of Florida. And so it's, operating in these warm waters, it's headed right. If it stayed on a perfectly straight target right now, it would hit New Orleans. And, so it potentially is another 7 years, almost to the day, by the way. It looks like it will hit 7 years to the day of Katrina, August 29th, 7 years ago. So it's kind of spooky. I'm sure they're preparing evacuations and everything right now. And, aren't we lucky to have a great manager in the White House like Barack Obama to do it?
Well, I mean, since he said that nobody built anything in this country but government, then I guess he'll be the only one, like Superman. He could fly into the storm and maybe knock it off course himself, because only government can fix it.
Yeah, and I want everybody to remember that line when he starts telling you about all the things he's achieved over the last 4 years, using our money and, all the power of the federal government, but he will be claiming those as personal achievements. But you and I, who've actually done things in the private sector, taken risks, built businesses, we didn't do that. He did that. Of course, he probably wouldn't claim credit for anything you or I did.
Well, I had one of your writers, Mr. Rocker, on last week, and he made the point, no, Mr. President, I got myself into the major leagues. You didn't. And I can say right now, I got where I'm at today with my focus, my dedication over 17 years, and my listeners supporting me. But it's because they shared my views. And it's very insulting at a fundamental level to have somebody who's only worked and lived inside government and had people ghostwrite his books and hasn't worked, I guarantee you, 18 hours a day like I have many, many times, hundreds of times. It is very irritating to hear that. And let me ask you this question, Joseph Farah, if a listener just joined us, editor and owner of WorldNetDaily.com. I know he has speechwriters who write some pretty good speeches for his teleprompters. And he looked like he was on a teleprompter when he gave that speech, and it turned out he'd given it several times before it got picked up on. What is the disconnect with the people in his administration to write that? Or do you have any info, being in Virginia by D.C., of who came up with that? Or do they think this country is so communist now that it's time to go ahead and start talking like Karl Marx?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're doing is they're collectivists, and they want to implant that collectivist mentality in as many people as they can. I think they figure we're at that point right now. Look at the polls, Alex. I mean, right now it's the latest polls show an even split between Romney and Obama. The only difference between them, as you point out, really, is that one is more collectivist than the other. One, Obama doesn't. There's not even a pretense anymore to believing in free enterprise and that sort of thing, self-government, limited government. There's a pretense, at least, on the other side in the Republican platform, which, of course, is going to be meaningless once Romney's elected. But I think that's it. I mean, I think that Obama is, what was the old saying, back in the days of the Soviet Union, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think what's going to happen in this election is we're going to take 1 step back. I think, and you know what? For us, I believe it's the best thing. Even though it may be planned, and I think you're right about the globalists who have backed off on the support that they gave Obama in 2008 because they perceive probably that he's moving too fast and he's exhausted whatever potential he had to advance their cause. He's become a liability. So let's switch to the guy who's going to take us one step back.
But we know the power structure is made up of different pieces. It's not one monolith. We know the ultra-rich, on average, are predatory, that want to shut down people they don't control, and so that's where the real fight's going on here. But he could stage a big false flag. He did Fast and Furious. He could do anything to pull his bacon out. We've had all those Democratic advisors talk about how much a terror attack like 9/11 or Oklahoma City would help them. They've said veterans and libertarians and conservatives are the new enemy. We could see them kind of framing that in the public's mind, preparing the ground. Or they could use a big war as a way to get us to rally around the president. Then there are real terror attacks, a response by Iran or others, or manufactured. People rally around the commander-in-chief. He gets back in, uses the war as a clampdown mechanism. Let's move to your sources that right now it looks like the green light's on.
Yeah, I think so. And part of it, Alex, these politics, international politics, are very complicated. Israeli politics are very complicated, more so even than U.S. politics. You know, I've spent a lot of time there. But in Israel today, where you rarely have a consensus, a political consensus among leadership, the population, and so forth, there is a consensus now. And keep in mind, this is where it comes from. 60 years ago, half the Jewish population of Europe was exterminated. They get their own state, and they're faced with a country that is, developing nuclear arms, and every single day, some mullah or some political leader in Iran is saying, "We're going to kill the Jews. This is the weapon that we're going to use to destroy the Jewish state and the remnant that survived the Holocaust." So this has bred a consensus in Israel that something has to be done. The only question is when, and this is how it affects us, because the when has a lot to do with this election. And here's my take on it. Right now, we don't know who's going to win the presidency, right? But in Israel, if there's a significant chance that they see Obama being reelected in 2012, then they're going to roll the dice before the election. They're going to take Iran's nukes out, or try to, before the election, which means October. They're going to wait until the last minute. They're not going to do it in September. It's going to happen in October. So we're in the, they always talk about an October surprise. This is a very predictable October surprise. And it changes the dynamics of the election, because, does it make people less likely to throw out an incumbent that they're really not too happy with? You look at his approval ratings, and they're abysmal. But do you change horses in midstream? I'm sure there's some people who are going to say that's not a good idea. Because if Israel, you also have to look at how Israel might do this. They may use tactical nuclear weapons. You know what that means. This is like a major, humongous international crisis.
Let me ask you this. Yeah, the Defense Department admits many nukes are being looked at. They've got bunker busters that carry nukes. Russia's threatening, lining up weapons. Why are the mullahs and the Ayatollah making statements like, we're going to wipe the Zionists off the map? Why are they doing that when they could back off and not have the war?
Why are the Iranians doing that?
Yes.
It's puzzling, because I think that in some ways, I think there's a battle going on inside the Iranian camp. Here, Iran also feels, to an extent, that its back is up against the wall. We tend to think of I think Americans think of the Muslim world. They don't understand there is not unity in the Muslim world. Iran is more fearful of Saudi Arabia than they are of Israel. They hate the Saudi more than they hate Israel. And there's a battle going on inside the Muslim world essentially between the Shiites and the Sunnis. And what they see, this is an accurate view. They're right about this. The Saudis, to a great extent, control U.S. foreign policy. It's just that simple.
That's right. No one ever talks about Saudi Arabia. I mean, obviously, Israel's in there manipulating as well. But no one, this is when I get major heat, if you talk about Saudi power in media, I mean, you name it, in politics, it is incredible. And that's my next point. They're openly sending al-Qaeda and jihadis in with NATO backing to bring down Libya, to bring down Syria. Iran sees this and understands they're 20% of the population, Shiite. They see the Sunnis taking over, backed up by the great Satan. And so here is the United States and NATO allied with al-Qaeda against the Shiites, and then Israel's being threatened by Iran, and so they want to attack. I mean, this is like a Mexican standoff.
It would not be an exaggeration to say that the U.S. military has been doing the bidding of the Saudis all along. You know, when we're involved in you know, Iraq and Kuwait, and now in Syria, you know, you say, well, what are the national interests the U.S. has in these operations? And they're very hard to figure out. But the Saudi interests are clear. And when every president leaves office, what happens? They all get these, you know, multi-million-dollar endowments from the Saudis. It's like, you know, it's one of the rewards of becoming a U.S. president is when you leave office, the Saudis take care of it.
Yeah, they pay $1 million every time you give a speech. It's a public foreign government payoff. But here's my issue. I see the Saudi government begging Israel to strike Iran. And I know Israel bashing is the religion over there. But why then is Israel playing into that? And why is Saudi Arabia, how can they get away with begging Israel to attack another Muslim country? Why do, I mean, it's amazing how complex it is. And then people, you know, in the West just want to make it Arabs, last parking lot them, and, you know, not knowing how diverse it is.
Yeah. Well, what Israel does is it plays its neighbors off one another. That's how it has managed to, you know, in addition to having a very efficient and strong military, it plays one-off politics with these folks. One day, you know, Hamas is the bad guy and the Palestinian Authority are the good guys, and it switches every once in a while, and that's what they do. I mean, you just go look at a map. You know, Israel's a little sliver of a country surrounded by 300 million Muslims in the immediate...
But how is it going to help Israel if they attack Iran and unify Muslims and then get attacked from all sides? I guess it'll help the politicians to have a big giant war where they can all be heroes, including Obama. So Israel's going to strike, and I think it's going to put Obama in the White House.
Well, I think that if they do it in October, it strengthens Obama's hand. So if Obama looks like he's even got a very good chance of winning the election in November, I believe you're going to see this happen in October. And the reason for that is because they know that if they wait until after the election, Obama will not, he'll pull the rug out from under Israel. He can't do that before the election because Israel is popular with the American people. The American people will basically look at it as, you know, this is a country fighting for its survival. And so So
they think once he's a lame duck that he'll put more pressure. So
yeah,
it's basically pushing ahead the timetable.
Exactly.
So
and
what do you think is going to happen
throughout the Middle East right now? By the way.
Sure. I mean, it's even coming out in mainstream news. That's basically what's going on, and you've got sources as well. So what's going to end up happening? I mean, is it leaning towards war or is it leaning away?
Well, you know, I was talking to Jerry Corsi about this. We're stuck here in our hotel rooms yesterday, and it's funny because, you know, he happens to be very informed in this area, and I got my own sources in this area, and he disagrees. He doesn't think Israel's going to attack before the election. Listen, I hope there's no war. I mean, I hope things can be resolved without war, but...
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
Now that Ron Paul's out of the way, the New York Times can report that he had more than 10,000 people at the alternate convention Paul Fest, and Paul never even really promoted that because I guess he wanted to leave things open for Rand to get a speaking slot and things and be part of the mainline Republican Party. I guess Obama unifies everybody. Pretty amazing. You can tell the establishment doesn't like Ron Paul the way they've treated him. For people that attack him and say he's establishment, they are completely off the reservation. I want to jam in a few calls from Jerry and from Rob and others here for Joseph Farah. But briefly, your take on Ron Paul. Let me stop you. We didn't have you faded up. Go ahead and start over, sir.
Yeah, I think Ron Paul has, if he's accomplished nothing else, has built an amazing foundation for the future. For his son Rand, I think the possibilities for Rand, based on the movement that Ron Paul has built, are practically limitless. This is one of the real, I think, great developments over the last 8 years. Is what Ron Paul has accomplished, a real grassroots movement, so I mean...
No, you're right. I was critical of the enthusiastic endorsement of Romney, which I think was a miscalculation, if you want to get just political, by Rand. But in a way, I do see them actually winning races against people like Dewhurst and others. I actually see them getting more constitutionalist in and kind of trying to retake the Tea Party in a way. I'm seeing some real success.
Yeah, I think Rand is a little more disarming politically than Ron Paul is. I think Ron Paul scares even a lot of conservatives with some of his positions, the way he talks. But Rand Paul is a little bit more refined and has a kind of a quieter approach, reasoned approach, and I don't know anybody who doesn't like Rand Paul. I mean, this is a guy who he's so persuasive. He persuades establishment Republicans in the Senate to vote right. So I think he's got a tremendously bright future, and a lot of it he has to thank his dad for.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, they're not perfect, but look at the alternative. Obama, who openly says he believes citizens shouldn't be able to own guns when he was a state senator.
Right.
I mean, again, I don't believe in lesser two evils, but when you've got people that are flaming revolutionaries, we don't need to get all worked up and energized hating on people that we agree with more.
Exactly.
We need to politically get out there and wake people up. Let's jam in a call. Mm-hmm. One caller who was holding just hung up. So let's go to Jerry in Illinois. You're on the air with Joe Farah. Joseph Farah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, both of you, Alex and Joe. Very nice to talk to you. First-time caller. I've been a listener for almost 2 years, and I got to thank you for opening my eyes. My question about the presidential race this year, I don't want to go and vote for Mickey Mouse again because we've been given the opportunity of voting for the worst of two evils, and I have been sick of that since 2000 and Al Gore and Bush. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you have any ideas? I was thinking of a write-in for Ron Paul or Rand Paul even.
Well, listen, we're almost on exactly the same page. 2000, I couldn't vote for either candidate. I announced that publicly. Even though, Gore was, to me, much worse than Bush. I just didn't. What convinced me, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the air, Alex, is in 2000.
Stay there. I want to hear this. Back in 1 minute. You stay there too, Jerry. Alex Jones here with a message to fellow freedom lovers. The prognosis for the entire planetary economic system runs from bad to worse. The globalist model is to shut down societies and starve patriots out until they acquiesce to the global takeover. That's why we've assembled the most vital and important preparedness items at InfoWarsShop.com. These are items that I did research on, that I personally use. We've got the Life Straw, so you can turn fetid water into safe water anywhere you go. The K-Tor hand crank generator to charge up key equipment during power outages or out in the field. Strategic Relocation, 3rd edition by Joel Skousen. When Disaster Strikes by Matthew Stein. ThyroSafe, used by Homeland Security to protect yourself during any radiological event. Hand crank shortwave AM/FM radios. Everything that we've researched and found to be the best is available at InfoWarsShop.com, and your purchase makes our InfoWar possible. We're getting prepared. Are you? InfoWarsShop.com. Talking to Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily. You were talking about what made you make up your mind. Was it in the 2000 election, Oh, four? Yeah, go ahead.
Inclined to never voting for the lesser of two evils. And there's a distinction between voting for the lesser of two evils and, listen, there's never going to be the perfect candidate out there. There's no such thing. We're all even Alex Jones wouldn't be the perfect candidate. We'd find something wrong with Alex Jones. We'd find something wrong with Farah. I might not even be able to vote for myself. But in 2000, I met Bush, and he was at a very small group. He was asked this question: if a piece of legislation winds up on your desk as president and it's clearly unconstitutional, what will you do? Softball question. His answer was, how will I know if it's unconstitutional? And I was stunned, and I said, I can't vote for this guy with that position.
No, he threw a lawyer flip-flop thing in there.
Constitutionality, believing in the Constitution is critical to deserve our support.
So because he was bad, you were basically out of it.
I was out of it. And, but, in 2004, I listened to the Swift Boat guys, and they got my heart. And, for that reason, I jumped back in and supported Bush, despite all the terrible things he'd done over the previous 4 years. The principle is there, but as we talked about the last time I was on your show, Alex, I think sometimes you have to vote defensively. And this is probably one of those rare occasions where I think it's so important for us to defeat the incumbent who is, marching us into a police state as rapidly as any president we've ever seen in our lifetime, that's for sure.
Well, listen, I agree overall with what you're saying. My only issue is he's carrying out the agenda of the globalist, and we need to start getting people to vote locally at the state level at 50, 60% turnout.
Oh, absolutely.
Not 8% turnout.
Well, Washington's not supposed to determine, what we do as a nation, as individuals. I mean, they're supposed to be responsive to us. And the way to get them responsive to us is to do exactly what you're saying. The beautiful thing about America is we're not supposed to have a monolithic federal government that controls our local police departments.
That's right. No one can deny we don't have a giant all-powerful state growing, and that liberties aren't being burned, and that freedoms aren't being destroyed, and that censorship isn't happening. We're going in the wrong direction, and all of us, need to speak up and talk about it and understand a giant army of snot-nosed collectivists who are dumber than a box of rocks are coming. Public schools are assigning mentors to all the kids, GPS trackers. They're ending the family. We are in a giant collectivist, globalist, plandopolis petri dish, and we have got to revolt against this every day in little ways. Did that answer your question, Jerry in Illinois?
Yes, it sure did, to a point. I mean, I'm getting sick of voting for Mickey Mouse as a write-it, because Mickey Mouse might have...
We all are,
Now, listen, we all are, Jerry, and I appreciate your call. Jerry, I think you should run for local office. Jerry, you should go speak out. I mean, what we're saying is it isn't all just about the presidential election. I'll be honest, I think it becomes a diversion in the final equation, and I think we're in deep trouble no matter who gets elected until we wake up out of this coma. What do you say in final comment on that, Joseph?
That's exactly what the advice I wrote back in a book in 2003, Taking America Back. Americans pay far too much attention to presidential elections and presidential politics, and they're not taking back their own communities. There's amazing power in your community.
Exactly. And look, Joseph and I are covering the election because most people are looking at it, and you want us to. Joseph, thank you so much for the time.
You bet.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.